I'm going to introduce myself first. My name's Emily Sheed. I'm a third year BA Ancient World student. So I'm in the Department of Greek and Latin. And I'm here today to talk to you about living in London and what it's like. So I've lived in London now since the beginning of my degree. And I live near London anyway. So it's nice to talk to you all about where I live essentially and where you now all live. So throughout this talk, I'm going to split it into a couple of different areas. So firstly, how to familiarize yourself with your surroundings. I'm sure that you're all starting to do that already. Then I'm going to talk about how to get around and what the best ways are to do that. Then I'm going to move on to talk about what you can do whilst you're in London. And then I'm going to finally talk about how you can maximize your educational experience and maximize your social life. So I hope that all sounds very interesting and we're going to get started. So the geography of London, this is just a fun little map of the area that UCL is situated in. So this is Fitzrovia and Bloomsbury. I've put a little star on it. That's basically where UCL is in relation to all of these other things like the BT Tower and the British Museum. And down here at the bottom, that's the BBC. And at the top is the park. So I hope what this map kind of shows you is how you're literally in the middle of everything and there's loads going on around us. So yeah, carrying on. Some more fun facts about UCL. So what I'm going to do is give you some really helpful geography stats so that when you go home to your friends, you can convince them that you're a true Londoner. So we, as UCL, are situated in the district of Bloomsbury and Fitzrovia. So a district is a little bit smaller than a borough, and it refers to a more specific area, and normally like different districts, and they're like famous for particular things. So Bloomsbury and Fitzrovia is all like a big intellectual centre for London. We're then in the borough of Camden. Often people think of Camden as Camden Town, where like all the punk rockers go and the docks and the food market. But Camden's actually huge. It goes all the way down from the Strand at the bottom, and then it goes all the way up beyond Camden Town itself into Kentish Town and up towards Highgate. So as you can see, it's a really big area. The amazing thing about UCL is it's in zone 1, so you're never going to have to pay crazy tube fares if you're just getting around UCL area, because it's all zone 1. Which also means that it's super central. So everything that's considered to be central London, in theory, will be quite close to where we are now. Within London itself, UCL is considered to be west central. So the postcode for everything is normally WC1. So what that means is we're a little bit west of the middle, but we're very much in the middle. In terms of your neighbouring areas, just to give you an idea of what you've got nearby, your neighbouring districts are Holborn and the Inns of Court. So that's where Temple is, that's where King's campus is, that's where LSE campus is. Lots of big fancy buildings and the Strand. Then you've got Soho and Trafalgar Square. So that includes like all your bars, Theatreland. You've also got the National Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery within that. And then up towards the like west and a bit more north, you've got Regent's Park and Marylebone. So Marylebone's like a really cute little village. There's got lots of shops and restaurants in it. They're all quite fancy. And then Regent's Park is like a beautiful big open space. And the top of Regent's Park is Primrose Hill. So in terms of neighbouring boroughs, these are a bit larger. You've got Westminster, which is ironically to the west, Islington, and then the city. So the whole area is quite small, but there's a lot in there. So hopefully that will help you see where things are. The map that I'm using here is just the standard UCL map. Helpfully, if you're ever wandering around campus, you will see this on lots of like, there are these black posts on the street, and then it will have a copy of the UCL map on it. If you want it on hand, you can download it on UCL Go, which is one of the UCL apps that you've probably been recommended to download by departments or UCL Online. So when you're familiarising yourself, it's best to start small. So if you begin with the local area, so Bloomsbury and Fitzrovia, or even smaller, just start getting familiar with campus. So the best ways you can do this are to walk to as many places as you can. So when you're walking to places, obviously you don't want to be walking too far because you don't want to tire yourself, but there are some really, really nice circuits that you can do around campus, and you can go down some of the major roads, like Gower Street and Tottenham Court Road, and they've got different things on them. You can also, I unfortunately didn't have a bike symbol, but you can use Boris bikes. So this is if you want to cycle a little bit further afield, but you're still kind of trying to get to grips to things. The only thing I would say about cycling is make sure you know where you're going and how to get home, because obviously for safety reasons, when you're on a bike, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to get out Citymapper on your phone whilst you're cycling. Oh, I think someone's joining. Is that what that is? Yeah. Hello. Oh, how do I get rid of this? Like that, sorry. So yeah, another way that you can kind of get familiar with places, and this helps you get a little bit further afield, is you can use a combination of public transport and walking. So either get the train or the bus to somewhere and then walk back, or walk somewhere and then get public transport back. So if you want to go some places that are further afield, head towards the river, or head up north towards Camden and Hampstead, potentially you don't want to be walking there and back because it's a really long way, but you do want to see these places, so it's nice to just walk one way, especially at the moment whilst the weather's not too bad. It's definitely worth making the most of walking everywhere. Again, trying to go to these places in the daytime, from experience, it's much easier to navigate places in the daytime than it is in the evening, just because things are darker, everything starts to look really similar late at night. And if you're with your friends and you're a bit distracted and you've had a few drinks, you just get lost so quickly. So the best thing you can do is go these places in the daytime and familiarize yourself with the areas. I'd also say, if you're trying to learn more about somewhere, as much as you can, avoid using taxis and Ubers and Olas, because you just won't learn anything, because you'll be in a taxi, you'll switch off, you'll be more distracted by the fact that your mask is itching your nose than you will be about what's going on around you. So this is how to like familiarize yourself and get comfortable with London. If you're looking specifically for how to get comfortable with campus and you're looking for a good walk that will take you to some good places and get you really familiar with the area, I'd recommend this one. It's called the Writer's Walk. If you just Google Writer's Walk, it does come up, which is nice and helpful. But I've put it here on the PowerPoint. So because Bloomsbury is such an intellectual area, and that's kind of what it's known for, there are lots of famous writers who live within the region, such as Oscar Wilde, Virginia Woolf, and Charles Dickens. So what this walk does is it takes you past all of their houses and where they used to write their works, and it also takes you around some really nice places close to campus. So, for example, it takes you towards Lamb's Conduit Street, which has got some really lovely bars and restaurants. It also takes you past the British Museum and Bedford Square Garden, which is another really nice garden that's also near a lot of eateries. So if you wanted to get food and then sit in a park, that's a great place you can do it. It also then walks you down Mallet Place, which is a road really close to campus with lots of useful things on it, such as the Senate House. So it's a great walk to get your bearings, and it's got some nice places to stop along the way. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you've got a free afternoon or free morning. So yes, that is the Writer's Walk. Then getting around. So when you first move to London, possibly one of the most overwhelming things is thinking, okay, so I'm seeing buses that have got numbers like 200 on them, which means there are 200 other bus routes. There are so many tube lines, I can't even count them all. And then I'm seeing black cabs here, there, and everywhere, as well as private taxis. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. So this is kind of just to simplify it all down for you. First step, download Citymapper onto your phone. If you've not heard of Citymapper, what it will do is it will give you the quickest route to get from A to B across the city, and it will also give you the timing for if you walk it, if you cycle it, if you use a private mode of transport such as a taxi, as well as your public transport options. It also prices them up for you, which is really nicely when you're trying to manage your budgeting as well. I'm sure you're probably all aware of this by now. If you're looking to save money, the cheapest form of transport aside from walking is getting the buses. It's £1.50 a route, which is cheaper than the tube, and obviously a lot cheaper than getting Olas and Ubers and stuff like that. In terms of the tube, obviously London is huge. There are lots of tube lines, and even within the close local area where campus is, so Bloomsbury and Fitzrovia, there are loads and loads of tube stations. Just to prevent yourself from being overwhelmed, I'd recommend familiarising yourself specifically with the Northern and Victoria lines, because these will be the lines that you use the most. And then from familiarising yourself with those, you will be able to get yourself all over London, because the Victoria line will take you all the way from the likes of Brixton and Vauxhall all the way up to Highbury Fields and to the northeast. And then the Northern line will literally take you all the way down from the likes of Kennington and Stockwell all the way up as far north as Highgate, and it will stop at places like Campus and Camden and Kentish Town all along the way. So they're really, really useful things to know. And all of this information you can also find on Citymapper. So once you've got Citymapper, you've kind of got the world as your oyster from there. In terms of getting around as well, it's really, really good to know what private taxi services you've got available that aren't black cabs. Black cabs are some of the most expensive ways to get around the city, so it's worth downloading all these other apps. You've probably heard of Uber. However, there are some more London-specific and niche ones like Bolt and Ola and FreeNow and Viavan that all have amazing deals and discounts and will save you so much money instead of forking out the highest price for a taxi. So you can download all of these. There are discount codes that you can share with your friends. And if you ride twice, sometimes they'll give you a discount. They do monthly offers. So they're really, really great services to know. Carrying on, you're also probably aware of the fact that there are loads and loads of tube stations around you, but unhelpfully, until you're right inside the tube station, you don't actually know what lines are on any of these tube stations. So the closest station to Campus is Euston Square. So Euston Square is on the Circle line, Hammersmith and the City line and Metropolitan line. So if you're trying to get to Farringdon, or if you're trying to get to Hammersmith or anywhere out by Shepherd's Bush, Euston Square is the line to use. It will also take you to places like Tower Hill on the Circle line, and all the way over to places like Victoria as well. The next closest station is Euston. So Euston is on the Northern line and the Victoria line, those two lines that I've told you to love and learn forever. It's also got overground services that will take you north and also towards Kilburn. And then it's got national rail services, which will take you outside of London. Warren Street is also on the Northern line and Victoria line. Depending on where your lectures are on campus, sometimes it will just be a bit closer to go to Warren Street. Otherwise, there's really not much in it between Euston and Warren Street, although it's important to know that Euston has two different branches of the Northern line, whereas Warren Street only has one. Another station that's useful and has a different line is Piccadilly. Not Piccadilly, is Russell Square, which is on the Piccadilly line. The Piccadilly line is another line that seems to stop absolutely everywhere, but unfortunately it stops at all the most touristy places in London, so it means that at particular times of day and the weekend it's an incredibly busy line. I've also put down some useful bus routes. Depending on what you want to do, the 88 and 168 are very touristy buses that will take you all the way up from places like, is that a question? I'll take all questions at the end, by the way, so don't worry about that. Yeah, so the 88 and 168 will take you to all the touristy things, and then the 253 if you're looking to go out east, so that's towards Hackney and Hoxton and Shoreditch, that's the bus to use. And then the 134 and the 28 will take you north, so into Camden and Chalk Farm and places like that. So they're just some fun things to note down in terms of how to navigate yourself. But ultimately, you've got all this knowledge about where to travel to, but what you want to know is what you can do once you've got all this travel information. So firstly, I'm going to talk about places to study, because one of the beautiful things about UCL is, even though it's a campus university, there are lots of places off campus nearby that make amazing study locations. So, for example, the British Library is on our doorstep, and to become a member of the British Library, all you have to do is sign up for a reader's card. It's free. It's a beautiful space. It's got some amazing works in there, including Shakespeare's folios and stuff like that. So it's an incredible space to work in, and there's so much going on around you and so many resources there that it's definitely worth exploring. You can also study in a museum. There are so many museums locally that I'm going to go on to talk about in a minute, but particularly if you're doing a humanities degree, there's a high chance that you'll be engaging with some form of material culture, and how best to study material culture than to actually go and see it in person. There's also so many coffee shops in the area. I can assure you that if you walk from campus to Tottenham Court Road, you'll probably come across 10. And then once you're on Tottenham Court Road, you'll find another 10. So there are so many coffee shops within the area, and amazing amount of them have Wi-Fi these days. That means that you can just study there freely. Another place that people are less familiar with, even though it is so close to university, is the Wellcome Collection. So the Wellcome Collection literally borders campus. And it's an amazing place to study. It's got its reader's room, which is brilliant, and it also has lots of exhibitions on. So if you're looking for a day out, or if you're just looking for somewhere that's peaceful and quiet, that isn't UCL itself, and you don't want to be sitting in the main library again, the Wellcome Collection is definitely worth visiting. And finally, you've got the Senate House, which is part of the University of London, rather than University College London, which has another library in it, on top of some specific collections, such as the Institute of Classical Studies, who have their own libraries in there. So it's a great place to study if you get a reader's card, although often you have to go through faculties and departments in order to get the cards to study there. But it's definitely worth it because it's a great space. So that is one way in which you can maximise your education experience being on campus. In terms of the coffee shops, these are all the closest ones that I can think of. So you have all your chains like Pret, Starbucks, Costa, Cafe Nero. I've just listed some there that are close to campus, walking wise. There's also the university coffee shops, so Bloomsbury Cafe, the Refectory, Aspirato in the Student Centre. They're all definitely open at the moment, potentially on reduced hours, but they are open. And then I think Gordon's Cafe is meant to be opening up in the coming weeks. So that's another really good space that you can use on campus. All the chain ones that I've mentioned and the university coffee shops have Wi-Fi. So regardless of what you're trying to do, you can probably do it from a coffee shop. So they're really great spaces. If you're looking for something a bit fancier and you're maybe going out to socialise, or you want to have a bite to eat whilst you study, Leitana is a coffee shop in Fitzrovia that does amazing brunch food. It's Australian. The coffee's fantastic. There's also Bloomsbury Coffee House, which is on Marchmont, or it's just off Marchmont Street. It's really close to Garden Halls and International Halls, if you're familiar with where those are. And they do really good coffee, but they're also famous for their avo toast. And then Half Cup is towards King's Cross, and it got voted UCL's favourite brunch place on campus when one of the news publications did a poll earlier this month. So that's a really popular one too. So there's lots and lots and lots of coffee shops on your doorstep. So if you're worried about the fact that the student centre seems fully booked, or you can't access main library, but you really, really don't want to study in your room, there are places available, and it's worth using them. Next, this is like an educational resource, but also something that's incredibly enjoyable. Being at UCL, you are slap bang in the middle of the Museum Mile. If you're unfamiliar with the Museum Mile, it is an area with over 13 museums in it, in a square mile in central London. So the best things about it are you're never walking more than a mile to get to one of these museums from campus, and they have some incredible collections in there. So you've got the British Museum, the Cartoon Museum, the Brunei Gallery, the Petrie Museum, the Grant Museum of Zoology, and the Wellcome Collection, and the Transport Museum. There are so many different museums within this mile. And the best thing is the Petrie Museum, the Wellcome Collection, and the Grant Museum of Zoology, along with the UCL Art Museum, you don't even need to leave campus in order to access them. So that's really, really great. And a lot of these are free, or they have discounted student admission. So that means that for you guys, if you want to go and explore, there are so many things on your doorstep that aren't just your studies. So yeah, and then another thing, this is a combination of social and academic. Whilst you're studying, it's really, really important to get some fresh air, because it's so good for your mental health, and having the ability to walk around is just, it's kind of like nice. It allows you to clear your head, and it's all really useful. I think when people move to London, they actually forget how many green spaces there are available for you to use, and it's definitely worth making the most of them, because there are some incredibly beautiful parks, as the photos show, that are so close to you. If you're just looking for a small park and you just want to see some squirrels and kind of chill out with a friend, maybe have a coffee, Gordon Square is literally in the middle of campus, and it's great. There's a lovely outdoor coffee shop. It's great to have a look around. If you're looking for like a big walk, you want to clear your head and you just want to kind of see some nice scenery and some green fields and have some lovely gardens, definitely go up to Regent's Park. It's worth it. It's beautiful. And in the summer, everyone goes there with their mates and they take a picnic, and they sunbathe and read, and it's really, really lovely. If you're looking to do like exercise and sports, whether that be tennis or football or going for like a good jog, Highbury Fields is probably the best place to go because it's got all the sports facilities there. It's got football pitches and tennis courts and hockey pitches. So that's a really, really great area for those sorts of things. If you're looking for the best views of London, Primrose Hill or Parliament Hill are the best places to go. You can go up there, walk up to the top, and you can see the whole skyline, and it's beautiful. You can see everything from Battersea Power Station all the way over to Canary Wharf. So it gives you these amazing views. Sometimes it can be a little bit busy, although if you go on a weeknight and you go in the winter, it's not busy at all. Parliament Hill is even more north than Primrose Hill, so that's up in the Heath, so the views are even bigger. And then if you're looking for nature, I'd recommend going to St James's Park, just because they have a huge bird collection, including parakeets and pelicans and some oriental birds that were gifted by various different countries. And it's really nice. It's much more central, but because of coronavirus, it's far less touristy than it used to be. So it's definitely worth having a look around. So yeah, they are the parks, and they're definitely worth spending some time in. Another incredible thing about being in a capital city is it has such diversity of food and culture, and like UCL is slap bang in the middle of some of the best food places in the city. Bloomsbury Farmers Market is literally across the road from campus. If you walk out of the Mallet Place exit from campus, you end up in the Farmers Market, and they do some amazing food. That's in the bottom photo because you can see Euston Church in the background. Exmouth Market is a little bit further away. It's in Farringdon, and or is it in Clerkenwell? I think it's in Clerkenwell. But if you walk beyond Langton and Francis Gardner, which are two UCL halls, you end up in the market, and they have some really great eateries. They've got Italian and Mexican outlets, and they've also got some other things that are more niche, like Brazilian and Vietnamese. So that's a really, really great place to go. And they also have some beautiful coffee houses. Camden Market, again, it's very touristy, but there are some great places to eat in the market. So it's definitely worth having and explore. And then beyond Camden Market, you've got some restaurants that it's worth making the most of that have excellent student discounts. So there's a new place that's opened across from campus called Eggslut, which does different like brunch food. It's all centered around eggs. There's also a place called Vapiano, which does a really good lunchtime deal for students. Carluccio's also do a lunchtime deal where you can get a drink and a hot dish for £5. Honest Burger do student discount, and Belushi's do 25% off food for students. So it's worth keeping your student card on you at all times to see where you can get the best deals on food and exploring those. It's also, whilst they've imposed a 10 o'clock curfew because of coronavirus, that's not to say that your nights out are completely curbed. There are some places that you can go that have great opportunities. So there are the Union Bars, for example. So if you haven't been to them yet, there's the Institute of Education Bar, which is great. They have a pool table in there, and they do some great drinks and cocktails, and you can get a pint for £3.80. There's also a chain of bars called Simmons that do a great student discount, which is where you get 2 for 1 in their happy hour as a student. So you can get 2 gin and tonics for £5, which is really, really cheap for London especially. So the closest ones are Euston Square. There's also one in Fitzrovia by Ramsey Halls and Astor College. There's also a Simmons in Camden, King's Cross and Mornington Crescent. Again, Belushi does 2 for 1 drinks for students, as well as 25% off food. So it's a really, really great place to go. And then another place close to campus is the Court. So the Court is just a pub, but they're really, really friendly to UCL students. They'll give you a discount if you show your ID, and it has a great atmosphere. So it's worth checking out. And that's just on Tottenham Court Road. And then another way in which you can maximize the most of your night out, especially if you're working on a budget, is to download Dusk. Dusk is an app designed to give you free drinks and discounted drinks. So what it will do is it will like see where you are and then say these places are offering you free drinks. So it's definitely worth using because it helps you save your money, which means that you can do more fun things during your time. So these are kind of like how you can do lots of different things during your time in London, whether they be things that you do on your own or things that you do with friends. I thought I'd put down some London experiences for you all because there are some things that you only discover the longer that you live here, but they're really, really incredible opportunities. So going up to the Shard or the Sky Garden is always amazing because you get this beautiful view of the city. They're really nice. And it just gives you like a different perspective on where you're living. There are also these things called lates, which take place at big museums and art galleries across London. And what they are events that are put on in the galleries and the museums. And they have events there. So they have speakers giving talks on particular areas of interest. Sometimes they have food stalls put up. They have bars put up inside them. They have DJs and live music. They're really, really great. I know that not as many places are doing them now because of coronavirus, but I know that you can still book to go to some, and it's just really, really interesting seeing a gallery at a different time of day in a different circumstance. So if you have an opportunity to check out a museum late, it's definitely worth doing. Another thing you should do is go to the canal. So Regent's Canal runs through the top of Regent's Park, and then if you go to the west it goes all the way to Paddington and then all the way out to Reading, and then if you go to the east it runs through King's Cross and Coldrops Yard and then goes all the way out towards the East End and Shoreditch and places like that. So it's definitely worth following the canal because it's really beautiful and peaceful down there. And if you go to Coldrops Yard or Paddington, there are some really, really lovely places to have a drink or something to eat. Another thing that you can do with your friends is go and watch the sunset from Primrose Hill. There's nothing like it. It's just a really lovely experience. Lots of other people go to do the same thing, and you'll get some great photos. And on bonfire night, I'm not sure if they'll do it this year, but normally you can see fireworks from Primrose Hill. So it's a really, really lovely place to go. Also, before they shut them because the weather gets too cold, maybe check out Hampstead Pond where you can go for a swim. It's very surreal to feel like you're swimming in a pond in London, but it's also quite fun. So it's definitely something you can do. And then if you're looking to make your room a little bit more homely, but also you just really, really love flowers, it's worth going to Columbia Road Flower Market on a Sunday. It's open 10 till 2, and they sell some of the nicest plants and flowers in London. So definitely go and check it out. You can also go for brunch at the Breakfast Club. There's one in Angel. There's a couple of other ones spread across London. Again, they do great brunch food, and it's just like a really, really nice experience. And then finally, I've put go to Pizza Union and then go to Simmons for 2-for-1 cocktails. So Pizza Union is a pizza place just the other side of King's Cross, so very, very close to campus. And they do really, really great pizza, and it's only a £5. And then they do frozen margaritas and lots of other things. And then if you go to Simmons for 2-for-1 cocktails, it's a really lovely evening at a really low cost. So it's another way in which you can maximize your budget but still have a good time. So these are my recommendations of things that you can be doing whilst you're in the city. And I hope that gives you a taster of all that London has to offer. So that is the end of my part of the talk. So I was wondering if any of you had any questions for me. If you're just wanting to think, let me get the chat feature up so I can see if anyone asked me a question. Oh, that was an accident. Sorry, the screen went blank earlier, so please ignore that message. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please. Oh, you're welcome, Alice. It was lovely to speak to you all. In the meantime, I was just going to kind of talk to you about London clubbing and what will potentially reopen, because obviously you guys have entered in. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so nice. What you might be able to experience if life goes back to normal. So UCL, there are some very like rigorous club routines. So on Monday, everyone goes to XOY or Roxy, which are two big clubs for different nights of the week. Then on the Tuesday, everyone heads south of the river to Elephant and Castle to a place called Ministry of Sound, which is a big famous club. They're now doing sit-in things where you can go and sit down and have drinks with your friends, so it's worth looking into. And then, oh, I've got a question. How has COVID affected the no worries about the spelling. How has COVID affected the London social life? Are the museums likely to close? From Anna. So, how has COVID affected social life? So the big thing is just the rule of six. Often we do things in very big groups, especially if you join a club or society. We used to have lots of large events, so you'd go along and there'd be like 20, 30 people doing something together. That really can't be the case anymore. There's quite a lot of bars that have shut. That's another way it's affected. And a lot of like smaller study areas have shut. So there'd be random places on campus where you could just kind of pitch up and study, but because of track and trace and safety reasons, you can't just pitch up anymore. Like you have to find an actual place to sit. Are museums likely to close? So as far as I'm aware, the ones that are currently open have no intentions of shutting. So for example, the British Museum, the National Gallery, the V&A, the Science Museum, the Natural History Museum. So all the big ones really. No one's really mentioned them closing. However, I know that a lot of smaller places have had to shut just because there's no real room to socially distance in them. All I'd say is you have to book in advance. That's really important. You can't turn up anymore, and just stay aware of what's going on. Otherwise, like, it's still possible to have like a very, very active social life. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Do I have any recommendations for flea markets or secondhand clothes and furniture shops? Oh, that's a good question. So in terms of flea markets, I'm trying to think. If you go towards Brick Lane, there's loads and loads of stuff out there. The only thing that I'd warn is that a lot of it can be quite overpriced because it's like really popular and trendy, and it's like Shoreditch. So everyone's like, oh yeah, I'll spend loads of money because it's Shoreditch. The same can be said for the Camden markets. I'd recommend, if you're gonna look for that sort of stuff, rather than going straight for the market, look in the charity shops around the market, because they always seem to get some absolute steals and they're really, really great. You can also go over to Portobello Road, which is in Notting Hill, but again, with it being Notting Hill comes a big price tag. Hoxton has some great places. One of my favourite places is to Save the Children, on, I think it's on Regent's Park Road, which takes you up to Primrose Hill. And the reason that I love it is because you can find some really fancy stuff in there really cheap. Like they had some Jimmy Choo shoes for like £30, and I was like, whoa, they're Jimmy Choos, they should be like £500. So that is what I'd say. In terms of furniture shops, where would you get furniture from? I know that if you go to Angel, you can find a lot of furniture shops. Likewise, Tottenham Court Road has furniture shops, but none of them are really secondhand. I don't really know. Everyone I know kind of bought their furniture from IKEA in first year and was like, oh, I've been to IKEA. Let me think. I'd say Camden's not a bad shout again. There's a lot on Freecycle. There we go. There's also lots of like trade and share groups that if you can get onto, they're really great because people have some really, really nice pieces. Oh, I've actually just thought about this. If you go to Clerkenwell, there's quite a lot of furniture places there, and some of them are a lot of antique shops. And again, this is far more high end, but if you've got a big budget, in Mayfair, there's a lot of like luxury antique places near Curzon Street. So have a look there if you're looking for anything like that. Does anyone else have anything that they are curious to ask me about living in London or London experiences, or just how going to uni in London kind of works? I'm happy to talk about that. I was also going to say, I only listed a few places on campus that are open at the moment, in terms of shops and not shops, coffee shops and bars, but there are more that are planning to open. So Phineas, which is like a student favourite, that's meant to be opening in term 1. The Print Room, which is a cafe stroke bar, that's also meant to be opening this term. So it's worth keeping a lookout for them. And then potentially as the year goes on and COVID kind of calms down, places like Mully and the Huntley will reopen. So yeah, they're all really great places that you can go and have a drink and speak to friends. Otherwise, is there anything? Oh, where is my favorite place in London? Oh dear, this is a good one. So there's a few places that I love. I love going down to the river, as cliche as it is. I really like bodies of water, and I just like seeing what goes on down there. So generally what I'll do is go down towards Waterloo, which you can do on the Northern Line. And then rather than going down South Bank, which is like, if you go east, I normally go west and I walk towards like Vauxhall and Battersea, and then Battersea Gardens are really beautiful. So that's one of my favourite places. I also really love Marylebone Village. I think it's really, really quaint, and there are some great food places. And then I also love where I live, which is in North London, near Kentish Town and Hampstead Heath, because there are some nice old townhouses and some great architecture. And then you're near to the Heath, where you get some beautiful views, and you can just kind of like feel like you're in the countryside, even though you're in the middle of London. So yeah, those are my favourite places. Does it? Oh, you're welcome. Does anyone else have anything that they're curious about, or have I talked you all out? I'll just wait and see if anyone's got anything else that they want to know. If you're interested in anything that I've talked about or referenced during this talk, you can you tell us more about the club scene? Yeah, I can. So as I was saying, Tuesday we will go to Ministry of Sound. On a Wednesday it's typically UCL sports night, so that's where all the sports teams, if you're thinking about joining one, do. They're really fun. They all go to this club where it's a bar called Loop, and you all pre at different venues across campus, and then you go down there, and it's like a crazy busy packed club night full of lots of people. It's great fun, lots of cheesy music, some questionable decisions are made there, but it's a great time. Then on Thursdays, sorry, I need to leave, you're welcome, that's okay. On Thursdays, people sometimes go to Fabric, which is a club that's normally 21 plus, but on a Thursday they often do a student night, so a lot of people will go there. And then on a Friday, so there used to be this club called Coco, but unfortunately it burnt down, and so then they had this night called, what was it called? It was called like Bubble Night or something, and they moved it to or I think it's called I Love London. Actually, they moved it to Electric Ballroom, so that does like cheesy bops, and it's like a really, really popular club night with UCL students. Otherwise there are lots and lots of other clubs depending on what you're into. Fire and Light Box is a big venue for like D&B events. Then in Camden, you've got places like Camden Assembly, which do more indie nights. Indie nights really good there. Club de Fromage is a club in Islington that does cheesy nights. Heaven is where everyone goes on a Saturday. That's like the big gay club in London. It's amazing. Oh, so good. Sometimes there are like drag queens playing there, so I'd recommend going to Heaven. Let me think, where else? Yeah, that's kind of a week in clubs at UCL. There's so many different clubs, and especially if you go on student night, everyone always tells you before you go to London, oh, it's so expensive. But it's not. You just have to be savvy with your money. You just have to find places that suit you. So yeah, that's what I would say about clubbing. Has anyone got anything else? Oh, you're welcome, Alice. That's my opinion on that. Otherwise, if everyone's kind of asked everything that they want to ask, I can wrap things up, but I'll just wait for another minute or two just in case anyone's got any like last minute things that they're dying to ask about. I didn't talk about them too much in my presentation, but I would say like Boris bikes are great, or if you want to buy your own bike, it's worth doing it just because it means that you can travel much bigger distances but still kind of experience a lot more and see things. But yeah, that is pretty much everything that I've got to say. It was lovely to talk to you all today. For more information about living in London, you can refer to the Inspiring Minds page on the UCL website, which is my blog post is there, which has a little bit more about various things. If you can't remember any of the apps that I talked about in my presentation or want links to anything, please ask now. Send me your email so then we can sort that out rather than you being lost without them. Otherwise, that is everything for me, and it was lovely to talk to you all. Is there anything, or is everyone good? Okay, I'm going to take the radio silence. Oh, you're welcome. It was so nice to speak to you all. I wish you all lots of luck, and I hope you have a wonderful time. Yes, so thank you all so much. Oh, thank you, Bethany, for that one. So you can have a look at that. Otherwise, that is everything from me. Thank you.